Good evening and welcome to the 11th edition of the annual Regulators and Policymakers Retreat being organized by the Independent Power Producers Association of India and Security Watch India here at the Taj Fort Aguada Beach Resort in Goa. With me, I have the pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, of introducing to you, to many of you who already know our speaker, and Mr. Gurcharan Das will be indeed speaking in this conference. Mr. Das, as you all would know, he has been the head of Procter & Gamble India, one of India's foremost FMCG companies and people who understand the Indian markets and indeed markets worldwide very well. Mr. Das brings to bear a tremendous amount of experience in whether it is marketing or marketing things that people need in the villages, marketing people that things they need in the urban areas. So he understands consumer logic, consumer mindsets, and in recent times, after giving up his career at Procter & Gamble, he's turned into one of India's most celebrated writers and columnists. So he's written what is India's Bible to, you could say, understanding corporate India and indeed the social influences that influence business in India. That book is called India Unbound, and a whole lot of people like us who are preparing for civil service at some point of time in life have indeed read that book. So we'd like to introduce to you the man who ruled Procter & Gamble at India, as well as the man who rules Indian minds, also in terms of the column that he writes for the Times of India. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gurcharan Das. Welcome to the conference, Mr. Das, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, we'd like to know, you've been tutored by some of the most original and some of the most prolific thinkers and statesmen of the 20th century. This includes people like, for example, Henry Kissinger, and we'd like to begin very briefly with what were your key, what was the key learning that you got in America, and that could explain how America managed to, do so well for itself in the latter or the 20th century, especially the latter half of the 20th century.
Well, I think you've moved from Kissinger to America, and that's fine. As far as America is concerned, I think America is still the land of opportunity. And even though they are going through a bad economic recession right now, but it is a land of possibilities. And America gives you the freedom to do what you want to do and to be what you are. And that is the reason, I think, what makes America different, what is called American exceptionalism, is the fact that they never had a land-owning class.
Okay.
See, all societies in the world were either feudal or they were zamindari of some kind, And America never had a landed gentry. That made a lot of things possible about America, and that whole why America is not going to go away despite many books that are appearing right now is a huge innovative ability that they have.
Right. So the absence of a landed gentry meant that do you mean to say that people were more mobile between sectors, between the service sector?
Well, I think that there wasn't the kind of in an agricultural landed society, there are rigidities. In India, of course, that rigidity was exemplified in the caste system. What Alexis de Tocqueville, the French traveler who came to America in the 1830s, he described as the volunteerism in America. In other words, at the lowest grassroots level, Americans were willing to give up their private time in order to canvass for their candidates, canvas for making the city, their village, their town a better place. And so they've had this tradition of being joiners, And this is another great trait which you see in the philanthropy that later emerged out of America.
Talking about philanthropy, sir, the allegation goes that the people like Rockefellers and people, who gave back to America actually made a whole lot of wealth using practices that was absolutely outlawed today. Standard Oil, the way they would block out other people from entering into their monopoly, and the entire monopoly, trade practices or anti-restrictive trade practices actually came up because of that.
Correct.
So how does a society explain this, that you first acquire in an illegal way, or at least what is today understood to be very distinctly illegal, and then you give back to society in philanthropy?
Well, I mean, this is the story of capitalism, isn't it?
Okay.
That the driving energy behind an entrepreneur, there could be many motivations.
Right.
And that's why you do need a degree of regulation when it comes to markets. And but a lot of the best regulation is a form, as we are discovering, of self-regulation. In other words, that regulation should not stifle the entrepreneurial energy. It should be able to divert it to positive signs. And so when people when they made their money, you have to, of course, judge them in the context of their times. You can't judge them by today's rules. And sometimes it's also very hard to know as to what was the right action. A lot of people would argue that Dhirubhai Ambani broke laws in order to succeed. But those laws, some of those laws of the license Raj were so bad that it was all right, because in the end there was a very big gain for the whole of society. So this is, of course, the means and ends argument.
Justify the means.
Yeah, and of course you can't, this is the problem. You can't go by only one type of sort of sometimes you have to look at the end, sometimes you have to look at the means also.
Right.